Part 2. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 11. Chapter 11 Bad News. Master Colin, it's really you. Colin was startled, and when he looked back, he found that a team of patrol cavalry was gathered behind him. The person headed quickly turned over and dismissed, took off the helmet, and revealed a very familiar face. Raymond M'Ben. Loyalty to Baron Angra, oh no, now is one of the two knights. Master Colin, why are you here? Colin looked at Raymond, who was leaning to himself, and didn't know how to explain to this knight, and he turned off the topic. My father, is he also in the camp now? Raymond was suffocating, and the sorrow was revealed in his eyes. Did you not receive the letter I sent back before? What letter? How long did you send it before? About a month ago. It is reasonable to say that the crow should have arrived in the Grey Castle long ago. I didn't receive any letters. Colin frowned, thinking that his previous speculation was right, the news of someone really blocking the front line. How could this be? Raymond was a little stunned. What did you say in the letter? Raymond lowered his head, his tone became low and sad, and he was guilty. Sorry, Master Colin, I wrote to tell you that the Baron was killed in the battle more than a month ago, unfortunately. What? Clint suddenly stunned. Although Colin would not have any feelings about this cheap dad, he was caught by this sudden bad news. The asylum in the expected disappears has disappeared. Moreover, it disappears forever. However, did the Baron of the Angle family fall on him? No. Lord. Colin suddenly realized a problem. If he did not cross, he should be assassinated and killed. Therefore, after the death of Baron Angra, Colin was assassinated again, and the title should fall in his sister Caitlin Angle. So Colin realized that in this assassination, the person who really made the most profitable was the sister Caitlin. Therefore, her suspicion is also the greatest. Colin suddenly felt cold. His sister even wanted to kill herself. Fortunately, I didn't go to the Eagle City. Otherwise, wouldn't it be self-voted? In addition, Colin noticed another problem. That is, his sister must have learned the news of his father's death, otherwise she would never dare to start with Colin. After all, if Baron Angle returned to the Grey Castle alive, he found that his only son was dead, and he would definitely not give up. Even if Caitlin is very clean, the Baron can't find the murderer, but after all, he is in the middle of the age, and he can marry his wife and have a child again, and the title may not be able to fall on Caitlin's head. In this case, Caitlin will definitely not take such a big risk to murder his brother. Therefore, Caitlin must know the news of his father's death on the front through some way, and then he thought about it. Just as Colin thought about it, Raymond pulled out the long sword around his waist, kneeled on one knee in front of Colin, and paid his hands with both hands, saying, I didn't protect the Baron, and I violated my original vow. Master Colin, you have the right to judge me. Colin came back and looked at the Raymond knight half kneeling, and suddenly asked, what about the Vala Cavaliers? Raymond obviously stunned. Obviously I didn't understand why Colin suddenly asked this, but he still replied honestly, the Vala Cavaliers were rushed in the battle, I'm afraid. So you didn't see Walla's body? No. Walla Uman, the husband of sister Colin Caitlin, and the illegitimate child of Earl Lord Uman. Baron Angle was strongly opposed to this marriage. Although Walla is the illegitimate child of the Count, after all, the blood is impure and his status is low. And Baron Angra is not the kind of person who has attached power, and is unwilling to marry his sister-in-law to an illegitimate child. However, I did not expect that Caitlin and Vala looked right. There was a big stance for love, and almost staged the story of a different version of Romeo and Juliet. Later, the Baron had no way to take his daughter, and it was really good to see Vala itself. At a young age, he was already a second-order knight. Then he nodded and agreed with the marriage contract. This time, Walla also got on the front line, and it was still missing in the battle. At this time, Colin has a 9-point grasp of the news that Walla's guy passed on his sister. As for why his news was not blocked, I am afraid that Earl Uman was also out of power. Perhaps, Count Uman is the real master of assassination. After all, after Caitlin inherits the title, her and Walla's children will be the next heir. In this way, the Baron of the Angle family flowed into the Uman family logically. Count Uman. Colin chewed the name that was quite powerful in the north in his heart, and the lust in his eyes flickered. Subsequently, the long sword in the hands of the Raymond knight who was half kneeling in front of him, slowly waved to the opponent's neck. Raymond closed his eyes and remained motionless. Long sword fell on Raymond's shoulders. But I didn't move forward again. Raymond Mo Ben Knight, can you be loyal to me? Raymond Huoran looked up and looked at Colin, mixed with shock, guilt, and the fortune of his life after the robbery. Colin does not kill Raymond. Through the test just now, he has confirmed Raymond's loyalty. A betrayer will not expose his neck under the master's sword. Colin appreciates Raymond's almost pedantic loyalty. Especially after just undergoing the betrayal of Carter Cavaliers and seeing the uncle of Desiazi Sal, an honest person like the Raymond Cavaliers seemed to be even more rare. Well. Raymond's left hand hit his chest fiercely, maintaining a half-knee posture, and vowed loudly. I, Raymond Mo Ben, today Baron Colin Angle, a great roaring white bear, presents my unparalleled loyalty. In my life, your will be my goal, and your sword refers to me. I swear in the sacred name of the ancestors of the Mo Ben family, and I will always be loyal to you. The roaring white bear is the badge of the Angle family. As for the position of the Baron, strictly speaking, it has not fallen on the Colin head. After all, he needs to be recognized by the Duke of St. Hilda. However, as the first heir to the Angre family, Raymond is not wrong with the old Baron to die. After all, as long as the Angre family territory is not lost and Colin does not have a rebellion, then even the Duke of St. Hilda cannot prevent him from inheriting the throne of the Baron. Get up. Colin laughed and asked Raymond to get up, returned the sword to him, and then asked. Where is Marquis of Charles? I want to meet him and understand the specific situation of the current army and the next movement. Master Marquis, the face of Raymond Knight suddenly became a bit embarrassed. Master Marquis is not in the camp. What? This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 12. Chapter 12 Female Master. The Marquis is not here. Yes. Where is he now? In the center of the camps on the east side of the Mirror Lake, one man and one woman in the largest and most luxurious camp is talking. If Colin is here, he will immediately recognize that the half-kneeling man is the San Hilda family knight who has previously issued an emergency order to the Firefox Mercenary Corps. At first, the High-Toe Knight was now looking at a humble knee. Master Marquis, in the face of the woman in front of him, the knight seemed a little hesitant. British Cavaliers, if this problem involves military orders, you need not say, women said softly. This is a tall woman, wearing a slightly wide snow-white fox leather coat, a beautiful golden hair hanging down from her shoulders and back, and the hair flashed on the hair, as if it has some kind of magic power. It makes people make people, which makes people make people, which makes people make people, which makes people make people. Dare not look at it, but involuntarily obsessed with it. The semi-transparent black gauze scarf covered her face, but the elegance and noble deep bone marrow could not be covered. Her every move has an irresistible temperament. This kind of temperament can only be owned by real aristocrats. However, the mage hat and a purple staff holding in her hands showed that this was a mage. This is a bit strange. Because in the human empire of this world, nobles and mages, although they cannot be regarded as dead enemies, are also two incompatible creatures. The reason is simple: the mage has no faith. In the eyes of these categories, only the truth of Olympician is the eternal pursuit. The gods are just powerful mortals who have mastered the truth of the tactics. Therefore, in the eyes of the aristocratic knights who believe in the Lord of Guanghui, the group of mage is the completely derivative of the gods, and the heresy that should be burned on the fire torture. However, in the glorious empire of the nobles, although the masters were not seen, they were not persecuted too much. The reason is also very simple: the mage is strong enough. Of course, the mage who does not believe in God is the same as the soldier of the soldier. The powerful ceiling is the 6th level, and the sanctuary mage has never appeared. However, it is a bit different from the soldiers. Even if the mage cannot enter the sanctuary, there is a way to use the strength of the sanctuary. This method is forbidden spell. Successive preparations, expensive cast materials, and extremely terrible costs can make the 6th Order mage release the ban. During the most fierce struggle between the glorious church and the mage parliament, there were 10 6th Order mage jointly released the forbidden spell Stars Falling. This terrible banning of a cities with a population of millions of people wipes away from the map. Of course, the masters also paid a very heavy price for this forbidden curse. 7 of the 10 6th Order mage died on the spot, and the remaining 3 died in the next 5 years. However, their sacrifice also made the church and the nobles deeply understand the terrible of the mage, and eventually the two sides reached a certain degree of reconciliation. However, the resentment left by the millennium struggle is not easy to resolve. In addition to the unsatisfactory contradictions in faith, the aristocracy and the mage are basically two forces that are similar to the stranger. Therefore, the female mage who could let the Sanhilder family take respect and treat the Sanhilder family. When the British Cavaliers saw that the female mage did not continue to ask the whereabouts of Marquis of Charles, they were relieved. But hesitated for a moment. He reminded again, "Miss Villa, you'd better stay away from this camp as soon as possible here, it's not safe." "How can there be a safe say on the battlefield?" The female mage glanced at the Cavaliers strangely, and said, "Since I came here, I was ready to fight." "No, you don't understand what I mean." The British Cavaliers aggravated his tone slightly. "I mean, here, very dangerous." The female mage changed then, staring at the knight half kneeling in front of her through a black yarn noodle scarf, and asked, "The Cavaliers of the Bliss, what is the task given by the Marquis?" "My task is to patrol the camp on the west side and maintain order," Raymond Knight said to Colin. The two walked in the east camp, which was more quiet, and so quiet than the messy west camps. However, it was too quiet. Colin frowned and looked at the situation in the camp. The anxiety in his heart became more serious. "Only patrol and maintain order, didn't let you go to the surroundings?" "No." Raymond shook his head. Obviously he had the same doubts. "Not only our team, I haven't seen any cavalry team scattered as whistle." Colin's brows were firing tighter. The importance of vision is self-evident in war. But now, the camp stationed by the Lake of Mirror directly gave up the inquiry of the surrounding situation. This is simply a tactical suicide. In addition to the possibility of Marquis of Charles, it can only show that the importance of this camp is very low. Or, here is just a bait. "The main force of the army may not be in the camp for a long time?" Colin asked Raymond as he looked at the over-quiet east camp. "Yes, Master, these days have always left the camp, but they don't see them back. Therefore, the main force of the regular army has long left quietly. Now there are only the group of mercenaries and people who have been recruited by urgent recruitment here. Of course, like you have lost the Lord's downfall night. Yes, our real task is actually looking at those miscellaneous soldiers to prevent them from running around." It seems, while Khalil said, he saw a team of cavalry coming out of the camp. The head of the white horse was a woman. Moreover, Colin recognized the knight who was close to her at a glance, that it was the one who issued an emergency call to the Firefox Mercenary Corps. "This is a big man." Colin, who had realized that he was in danger, immediately walked over. "Since he can't find Marquis Charles, finding the big man in front of him should also let him get rid of the fate of becoming a cannon fodder bait. However, without a few steps, Colin was scared by the harsh arms. Woo dash. Colin turned his head suddenly and saw a group of birds in the woods in the north. Subsequently, in the tremor of the earth, a black and white thin line appeared at the horizon. The giant is here. As if the water drops dripped into the hot oil pan, the entire Jinghu camp immediately boiled. Enemies, enemies. Don't run around, line to welcome the enemy. Nympho. The shouting of the officers had no effect at all, and the group of Wuhi people gathered in the west camp was completely confused under the sudden surprise. This is the evil result of not the whistle. When the enemy strikes, there is no enough reaction time. In fact, even if there is enough time to react, the group of soldiers who were urgently recruited in this camp now cannot resist the regular army of the trolls. Colin is very clear, the next thing is definitely a slaughter. So, he pointed to the woman who hurried to the east, and said with a sink to Raymond. Go, let's follow her. This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 13. Chapter 13. Kill. The huge drama array seemed to be from the Tao of Hell, wrapped in the power of crushing everything, and rolled towards the grand camp of Jinghu. For a while, it was like a cracking of the sky and the shore of shore. The fragile defense line that barely organized in the Jinghu camp was collapsed under such an offensive. Tong. Tong. Nympho. The collapsed human army was squeezed into the icy lake water under the impact of the giant divine army. There were only two directions in the two things. Go out. Woo. In a loud wolf, the earth began to tremble. The two wings of the giant demon army were divided into two wolf cavalry forces, one east and one west, chasing the deserters of humans. Wow! The calm mirror lake suddenly surged, and the huge waves came towards the giant wolf cavalry on the east side of the battlefield. Stop forward! The leader of the wolf cavalry roared sounded. However, the wolf cavalry in the rapid charge could not control the momentum. The giant wave seemed like a horrible big hand smashed down. Well. Hundreds of wolf cavalry were swallowed in an instant. There is no trace of blood, nor shattered bones. The turbulent giant wave immediately frozen immediately after contacting the ground, forming an ice wall of more than 10 meters, and it was running in front of this giant wolf riding. Among the ice walls, the giant wolf cavalry also maintained a post-lifting posture. Living. Such a horrible change was scared that the wolf cavalry behind him stopped. Before the ice wall, he couldn't patrol before his face. Seeing that this human deserter is about to run further and further, a red spear screwed out from the center of the giant army, and a long blood stain was drawn in the sky, and eventually pierced into the ice wall. Click. A crack appeared on the ice wall. Subsequently, more cracks extended from the position of the spear piercing, and it instantly covered the entire wall like a cobweb. Well. The ice wall is broken. Numerous ice cubes accompanied by the wreckage of the wolf cavalry. Chase. With the command of the leader, the wolf cavalry force reorganized and chased east again. It's just this time, this wolf cavalry has no arrogance at the beginning. Is there a mage in that human deserter? Stepping on the fine broken ice cubes, a giant's ride on the white wolf picked up the blood-red spear fell on the ground. Obviously, he just broke the ice wall of the road. Quick, you can also chase it. This should be a big fish. Another giant who was riding a white wolf came over and said to the troll general who picked up the spear. The mounts of the trolls are icefield wolves. This kind of fierce beast that is one circle larger than normal horses is generally gray. But there are also very few ice wolves that have white hair. Such a white wolf is sacred in the eyes of the trolls. It is the incarnation of the gods. They believe in the war, also known as the god of war, in the world. Therefore, only the noble monster is eligible to treat the white wolf as a mount. Yes, Master Gameabic, quick bowed to the ritual, and then led a team of wolf cavalry to scream east. The ice wall spell here is just a small episode. On the front battlefield, this temporary patchwork human army has long been defeated, either kneeling to begging for mercy, or was caught in Jinghu Lake by the giants. Only a few people were still struggling to resist, trying to kill a blood path, and rushing out of the encirclement. In fact, there are not few human residues that have been rushed out. Because the giant army seemed to be a little scrupled, he did not invest all his troops into the encirclement to intercept the scattered soldiers of humans. Instead, more than half of the elite troops were used as a reserve, as if prevented. The killing is still continuing. The flowing blood is constantly remitted into the mirror lake, dyed half of the lake into a dazzling red. The suffocating bloody smell attracted a group of vultures. They hovering over the battlefield anxiously, ready to rush down at any time. The sun gradually west, and the sunset of the sunset began to burn in the sky, but the sound of killing by the mirror lake showed no signs of stopping. At this moment, a commotion suddenly came behind the TRHZE. A trivial biography rushed in front of Gangbek, and reported loudly, "General, the human army was found in the rear, and there were about 40,000 or 50,000 people." Okea was not surprised, and laughed, "Okay, that little lion finally dared to show up, haha, let's give him a lesson." The national emblem of the St. Hilda family in the north is a golden lion. The little lion that Gambred said obviously refers to the son of the Duke of St. Hilda, the Marquis of Charles. The Marquis should have been the highest commander of the human side in this battle. But he was obviously unwilling, or he dared not dare to confront the DV army. Instead, an emergency recruitment order has attracted a group of mercenaries and militia to fill the Jinghu camp as bait. He himself led the real army to attack from the rear while the troll attacked the Mirror Lake camp. Although the entire plan is a bit cruel, it is also a good strategy. If you can really hit the trolls and be caught off guard, make them unable to take care of each other, maybe they can win in one battle. Unfortunately, somehow, this strategy has obviously been learned by the commander of the giant demon army in advance and prepared for cope. Therefore, when Marquis Charles led the army to the back of the troll army, he did not like his own expected terrain, but he hit an iron plate with his head. A battle kicked off. The night is deep. Half-wheel bright moon hangs in the air, and the cold glory is sprinkled in the forest. A team of human cavalry was camping in the forest, but they did not dare to cook fire, worried about exposing the target, and attracted the chase behind them. 3 days have passed since the defeat of Jinghu. 3-day escape, killing, and bleeding. This team of more than 500 people now has only more than 100 people. Under the siege of the giant demon wolf cavalry, they can be regarded as a miracle to the present. Of course, this is also because their combat effectiveness is really powerful. Moreover, they also have a caster. Although in the front header, the mage was completely assumed by the same order knight, and even the soldiers hanging, because no one would stand stupidly and wait for the mage to sing without interrupting or dodging. But on the battlefield, the role of a mage is far more than the same class knight. The ice wall that blocks the wolf cavalry is a good example. It was a third-order spell, and the life of hundreds of wolf cavalry ended in an instant. But if a third-order knight faces hundreds of wolf cavalry, even if there are no professional in these wolf cavalry, he will die under the siege of the other party. At most, dozens of cushions are pulled. The forest was quiet, only a few occasional momming, and the faint howl of the owl. In the camp, most of the crowds were eating hard bread in silence. Only a few leaders gathered together and whispered how to get rid of the chase behind them. Meow. Ziobai, don't run around. Colin chased Ziobai's figure and came to the center of the camp. Sorry, it's more naughty. Fine. The female mage grabbed the kitten who tried to crawl on her, and hugged it in her arms. Seeing the situation, Colin sat down and didn't see it at all. The female mage seemed to be aware of the small abacus of Colin, and she didn't drive him away. Instead, he asked, "Which knight are you?" Colin looked up at the female mage. Black yarn covered her half of her face, leaving only a pair of big blue eyes, as if reflected the deepest desire in the heart. "My name is Colin, Colin Angle. This chapter is finished. The original vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 14. Chapter 14 Plan. This time Khalil reported the real name. Because he knew that the people in front of him were not those mudlegs of the Firefox mercenary corps, and if he also used the false identity of Consuduo, the probability of being disassembled was great. Moreover, he didn't know who had to kill himself before. Now, since he has guessed who the murderer is, there is no need to hide observation. What he wants to do is only one: revenge. Angle, the female maid, frowned and frowned. She seemed to think that the surname had heard of the surname, but she couldn't remember it for a while. Lord of Grey Castle Town, Baron Angra, Roaring White Bear, the Bliss Knight reminded. Yes, it is my father. Colin's left hand stuck his chest, bowed halfway, and performed a standard noble ceremony. The female mage hesitated, then got up and bent, her right hand pressed her lower abdomen, and her left hand held the skirt of the mage robe, and she also gave a gift. Sure enough, Colin moved in his heart that this female mage was really a noble. Hey, mage among nobles. This is really interesting. Moreover, looking at the respectful attitude of the Bliss Cavaliers, and the gesture of fighting and guarding all the way, this female mage may have a great relationship with the St. Hilda family. However, Colin did not delve into her true identity. Nowadays, the relationship between the imperial nobles and the mages' parliament is cold. The female mage from the aristocracy is naturally an extremely embarrassing existence. And she has been covering her face, and she obviously does not want others to know her true identity. With the help of Ziobai, Colin came here, but he hoped that he could have a relationship with the real owner of the North, the St. Hilda family. This is the key to he can revenge for his predecessor and let himself get rid of the crisis. I did not expect the Colin Knights to be in the Jinghu camp. Bliss looked at Colin expressionlessly, with a slight look at it. Compase of it. Khalil was mixed, and then transferred the topic and asked the purpose of this trip. I don't know what suggestions for the Colin Cavaliers, Bliss asked without answering, but asked. Although Khalil's identity gives him qualifications to join the discussion, this does not mean that he can automatically gain the trust of Bliss and others. Colin did not care about Bride's Guardian, but just picked up a branch of the branch to draw a simple map on the ground. If I remember correctly, the closest city to us is to fall in the Eagle City in the southeast direction. There is about 4 or 5 days according to the current direction. It should be our destination. Yes, Bliss saw Colin so familiar with the surrounding geographical environment, and he didn't deny it anymore. Colin smiled slightly, and the branches in his hands continued to draw circles on the point of the felling. Bliss didn't speak anymore. But Colin still captured a touch of unconfidence from his pretending to be determined. After escaping, the cavalry team stayed in the Jinghu camp. Jinghu camp was severe and injured, but the chase behind him seemed endless, and the tighter chasing. Obviously, Bliss also began to feel the situation was bad. I don't know what suggestions for the Colin Cavaliers, this time, the female mage asked. Colin smiled and drew a big times on the point of the fall of the Eagle City, and said, "We can't go to the Eagle City, it's a dead end." The female mage frowned, and seemed to be a little disgusting to the assertion of Colin. But the Bliss Cavaliers next to him asked, "So, which direction should we go in?" Seeing that Bliss did not deny himself, Colin immediately understood that Briggs should also notice that a large net around was quietly taking shape, waiting for them to hit them in. Since the felling city is the most likely to escape the direction, the giant will inevitably set a heavy block in that direction. Going north, Colin drew a huge arrow on the ground, pointing directly to the north. North, the female mage screamed immediately, will we turn back again? That's right, if you go north, it is the direction of the Jinghu camp. Bliss didn't speak, and stared at the simple map on the ground. Colin raised his hand and pressed his hand to signal the other party. Then he explained, if you feel that it is an impossible option to go north, it means that the giant will not expect that we will look back. But isn't that self-invested? There is indeed a large net around us, and it is constantly tightening. Colin opened his right palms and clenched it instantly. However, the weakest part of this net is the north. If we want to break free of restraint, it is best to be the best, preferably, it is best the choice is to turn back, go north. And, Clinton paused, the real army of Marquis Charles should be in the north. The eyes of the Bliss Knight flashed and remained silent. The female mage has no scruples about this, nor does it unexpectedly. Colin can guess the combat intention of Marquis of Charles, but asked directly, do you think Marquis of Charles has hopes to defeat the Dajan army? Colin shook his head with both hands. He even knew how many armies, how the combat effectiveness, and his ability to command, and how could he know nothing about it? How could he guess the combat results? Regardless of whether Marquis Charles is victorious or negative, it has little to do with us because, what we have to do now is to jump out of the encirclement of the chasing troops. After jumping out, we can release the news of the whistle, explore the news of the Jinghu battlefield, and then make further plans. In that way, there are mostly room for rotation. The female mage thought for a while, and felt that Khalil said it also made some reason. However, she has been focusing on Olympic research since she was a child and has not received military education. She was also unpredictable for Khalil's bold suggestions, so she had to set her help to the British Cavaliers next to her. Bliss pursed his lips for a long time, and finally nodded, I agree. Colin was relieved. Although it is indeed the best opportunity to break north to go north, the reason why he really didn't want to continue to move forward did not say. The biggest suspect who murdered the former, the biggest suspect of murdering, was there, but her sister Caitlin was there. If it was just a conspiracy of Caitlin alone, Colin was not too scared. However, if the Lord of the Eagle City is also involved in it, then what he has passed now is the real self-voting net. Okay, then we will turn around tomorrow and go north. Seeing Bliss also agreed with the plan of Colin, the female mage also made up her mind. Later, she returned the kitten in her arms to Colin, and at the same time asked, why is it called Ziobi? Colin took over this pure blue short-haired cat. Is the name Ziobi good? No, just something unexpected. Haha, Colin smiled and replied with some pointing. Is it a good thing to let others guess their thoughts? The female mage also laughed, and a pair of big eyes turned into crescent. It makes sense. This chapter is finished. The original vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 15. Chapter 15, All the Way North. By the stream in the forest, a giant wolf cavalry was taking water. Around him, 4 companions were alert. People with rich experience in the wild know the importance of water sources, but it is also because of extremely important that it has made it a natural trap. A wolf cavalry took the water and stemmed to the companion. At this moment, he suddenly smelled a sense of disturbance and immediately pulled out the scimitar around his waist. The other 4 wolf cavalry were also shocked by their companions, and they started to look around in an instant. However, nothing happened. The forest was silent, and only the breeze gently brushed the rustle of the treetops. The wolf cavalry did not relax his vigilance, but became more nervous. Because, it's too quiet. The sound of the arrow whistling suddenly broke the suffocating silence. Then there were 2 screams. The remaining 3 giants were too late to check that the 2 companions of the 2 arrows were dead or alive. They quickly turned over and climbed into the ice-field wolf, and ran around. Chase! The British Cavaliers sang, and a horse rushed out first. Behind him, hundreds of human cavalry came out of the horse. The tranquil morning was completely broken, and the bloody killing prelude played again. Generally speaking, the icefield wolf is better than the warhorse in a short sprint, but if it runs on long distances, its endurance is relatively poor. Therefore, after the three giant wolf cavalry rushed out of the distance, not only did not throw away the tail behind him, but was chased and closer. Moreover, after the closer distance, human arrows hit again. After a while, 2 wolves died. In the end, the remaining wolf rode, and blushed into the buttocks of the ice wolf underneath. Oh! Under the pain of the ice-field wolf, it suddenly accelerated, and it opened some distance from the chase behind him. However, the accelerated buff obtained by self-defense on this has not lasted too long. The icefield wolf who lost too much blood gradually became physically weak. In the end, it was caught up by the human cavalry. The troll rolled on the ground a few laps, and then he climbed up, and even wanted to continue to run forward. Bliss caught up, cut off the head of the giant devil. Before he was breathing, he was embarrassed between the woods in front, and then he jumped out of more giant demon wolf cavalry. Still a step slower. Belly sighed secretly, knowing that he was still not fast enough to solve the speed of these boulder whistle riding, which attracted more enemies. Line. Visually, the distance between the opposite wolf cavalry, Bliss knew that the battle could not be avoided, so he ordered loudly. Go ahead. The human cavalry who had just hit a while, panting slightly, and pulled the armor again in Bliss's command to welcomes the enemy. Accelerate. Fortunately, the number of wolf cavalry who strikes is not too much and can fight. Charge. As the distance closer, the two sides almost entered the sprint stage at the same time. No concession, no dodge, and no kindness. Those who are brave on the narrow road win. Kill. Kill. Dash. Well. In the huge sound of impact, blood and shattered bones splashed. Bloody, brutal, and miserable. Life becomes a sacrifice, and blood is embellished. The tranquil jungle instantly became a terrible contestant. After some fierce battle, after all, humans occupied the upper hand. The cavalry of the St. Hilda family is indeed elite. Moreover, Colin's guess was right. In the direction of the north, the troll did not arrange heavy soldiers. Obviously, the other party did not expect that this group of human deserters dared to return to the main battlefield. Chase. Seeing the remaining dozen giants wanting to run, Bliss immediately ordered pursuit. Can't let these guys run away, otherwise they will definitely attract more chase. At this moment, a blue light suddenly bloomed in the forest. In the direction of the giants retreating, it seemed to have suddenly changed the season. A layer of frost was covered with the ground and treetops at the speed visible to the naked eye, and then instantly shrouded the ice wolves to make them difficult. Magic! The leader of the wolf cavalry screamed, and the despair appeared in his eyes. Yes, the female mage hiding in the rear finally completed the chanting. A third-order spell Frost Star just smashed it out, and the faster of the wolf cavalry fled. Kill them! Bliss took the opportunity to rush up and put on the giants who seemed to be pressed slowly and put the keys one by one. Colin rushed to the leader of the wolf cavalry, and cut off the right hand of the opponent holding his weapon, but did not make up for him to kill him. I try if I can ask any information. Colin dragged the half-dead wolf cavalry leader and shouted towards Bride. Okay, but you're better, we can't stay here for a long time. British nodded, and then ordered loudly to his men, hurry up, give you 10 minutes to clean the battlefield. Yes. Master Colin, do you need help? Raymond Cavaliers came over. No, just come by myself. Colin rejected Raymond's kindness and dragged the leader of the wolf cavalry alone behind a big tree and asked, tell me, is there any other giant army nearby? Oh. The leader of the wolf cavalry sprayed a bloody vomiting and scolded, "I will not tell you if I die." Colin tilted his head, avoided saliva quickly, then pulled out the dagger, and cut the other's throat and cut off his throat. "Okay, then you go to death." "Well." The leader of the wolf cavalry glared at his eyes, and seemed to be asking, "Why don't you play the card according to the routine?" When the other party was completely out of breath, Colin looked up and looked around, and when no one noticed his side, he quietly took out the water sack. "Guru, Guru." That's right, the real purpose of Colin is not an interrogation. He noticed in the previous battle that the leader of the wolf cavalry was a warrior. Similar to the human cavaliers, the samurai is the unique occupation of the giants, serving the god of war, and therefore has the potential to promote the sanctuary. After discovering the blood of the warrior's blood, Colin felt that he should try whether the blood of the giant warrior was the same as the human knight, and it can also help him to improve his strength. Moreover, the strength of the wolf cavalry leader should be between the second and third tier, which is higher than the current level of Colin. Therefore, if the blood of the samurai is really effective, he should soon know. 10 minutes passed, and Colin sticked the full water sack to the team and returned to the team. The battlefield has been cleaned, all the giants and their mounts were killed, and the corpses were randomly spreading in the forest. The war deceased on the human side was buried by grass. After this battle, the number of fugitive teams is less than 100. The number of Colins is about, and there are currently only 70 or 80 people. With a sigh, Colin turned over and was ready to set off. At this moment, Bliss came to Colin with a warhorse with a female mage. "Colin Knight." "MS, what ordered?" The female mage lowered her head slightly, and seemed to have a little shyness in her words. She dodged Colin's eyes. "Excuse me, can I have a horse with you?" This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 16. Chapter 16. Even across the black yarn, Colin could still see that a touch of red arose from the female mage's face. At this time, he also noticed that the blonde hair of the female mage did not know when it turned into white. Moreover, a rays of frost condensed. She can't control her arcane energy. No wonder you need help. Of course, this is my honor. Since it was proposed by the woman, Colin would not be arrogant. And he also understands that the reason why he chose himself was not the opponent who suddenly saw him, but because he was the highest nobleman in this team. That's right, class discrimination. In this world, it is so taken for granted. Even if the British Cavaliers are powerful, they can press Colin with one hand. But as long as he has not been sealed or becomes heir, in the eyes of the real aristocracy, he can only be regarded as an aristocratic reserve, without really entering the threshold of the nobility. There is a sentence that can describe the embarrassing situation of the Cavaliers very properly. In the eyes of civilians, they are nobles, but in the eyes of nobles, they are civilians. Therefore, the noble female mage would rather choose Colin, and will not let the more familiar and more trustworthy Bliss approach herself. Of course, it may also be because Bliss needs to lead the team and cannot be distracted. While thinking about Colin, he rolled over and rode on the female mage's war horse. There is no nephrite warm incense, only the cold ice. The little wildfire that made Colin rose in his heart all at once completely extinguished. The female mage stiffened into the arms of Colin, as if looking for warmth. Bliss glanced deeply with a slightly warning look, and then turned to rectify the team to set off. "Sorry, Cavaliers, these angels are too frequent with spells and have some disconnection, therefore, you need to trouble you." "Don't say that, you can only help us from the danger. Rest assured, I will take care of you." The team set off again. Because the speed is not slow, the horse's back is bumpy. The female mage's body was weak, and she almost rely on the embrace of Colin to fall. "Are you okay?" Colin felt that the female mage in her arms trembled slightly, and asked in her ear, "Do I slow down?" "It's okay, don't need it," the female mage gritted, "we must leave here as soon as possible." "Good." All the way bumps, the two were close together again, inevitable some friction. Then Colin embarrassedly found that the blood of his whole body had a tendency to gather towards a certain part. It seems that vampires also have that ability. Wait when you have time to write down. Fortunately, Colin can now control the flow of his own blood at will, and he takes the initiative to scatter the blood at a certain part to the whole body, avoiding embarrassment. "What is your name?" In order to disperse, Colin asked nothing to find. The female mage hesitated for a while, but answered, "Vera." But she did not say her surname. Colin frowned, the flower of truth. "Do you still understand the elf?" Vera's tone was a little surprised. "Of course, this is an essential skill of an elegant nobleman." Colin raised it casually. "In fact, this is just the butler-ing, who wants to improve the Angle family style, try to force some knowledge from Colin." But Colin only learned a little fur and barely calculated a half-hanging. At this moment, he just hit the mouse, just a blind cat. "Inu koimas quivi, lor ellen lookamiyul." It was a series of elf words emerging from Vera. As a race to learn the use of Olympician energy, the elves must read it in the language of the elves, so this is also the language for mage to learn. Clade, but the half-hanging Colin was blind. "Gig," Vera, who was embarrassed to catch Khalil. "Stinky woman." "What?" Vera's long eyebrows frowned suddenly. "What language do you just speak?" Guess Colin smiled proudly. Of course he would not tell the other party that he just said Chinese just now. "It's a bit like Kunya," Vera speculated, but then shook his head again. "This is impossible. Kunya is a special word for higher elves, but has long disappeared in the world like higher elves. The current elves and Naga are actually descendants of the former high elves. Therefore, whether it is to pursue the ancestors' footprints or to explore the ancient ancient books that have long been understood, Kunya has always been the focus of these two races and mage. But unfortunately, the research results of thousands of years have just pieced up the pronunciation of dozens of words. Therefore, Vera felt that even Colin, who did not speak the elves, could not be Kunya. Although his pronunciation just pronounced similarly to the Kunya words that are currently cracked. What kind of language is Kunya? Colin was really the first time he heard the term. Vera said secretly, "Sure enough. The former higher elf special terms, but have long been lost." "Oh," Colin responded casually, and then curiously, "How did the high elves disappear? Did your mages' parliament have developed something?" "No," Vera shook her head, "time is too long, and the only may record the ancient books that had happened in the end or written in Kunya." Colin rolled his eyes, and he seriously doubted the ability to decipher the language. "But," Vera stopped talking. "But what?" "However, there are some speculations in the mage parliament." "Tell me the story." "The time of the dragon and the high elves disappeared about 5,000 years ago, while the glory lord, the god of war, the goddess of fate, the god of the storm, etc. the world spreads faith. So, what is likely to be connected between the two?" "You dare to speculate on the glorious lord," Colin interrupted toughly. He must do this. Although he felt that Vera's guess was somewhat reasonable, and he didn't have much fear of the so-called gods, as a knight, he had to stick to his position. This is his person. Otherwise, he will be excluded by the entire noble class. Vera apparently felt a little stupid and discussed this kind of problem with an enthusiastic knight. She sighed and seemed to lose her interest in the conversation. Colin no longer speak, pretending to be offense. Over time, Colin discovered that the body in his arms gradually warmed. Obviously, the female mage is gradually recovering from the output of Mystasia. However, in this way, the body friction between the two became more fragrant. Colin must work harder to control your blood and do not gather in a place that should not be gathered. Even so, a faint rose flower fragrance kept drilling into his nose, moving his restless heart. Finally, when the sky was getting darkened, the team stopped and rest, and Colin left the horse back with relief. But at the same time, he felt a little reluctant. "Thank you for today, the Knight Cavaliers." "You don't have to be polite." Colin bowed to salute, just took a few steps back and then asked, "Yes, what exactly does the elf language you say today mean?" Vera hesitated a little. "Faith, the truth, not a lie." "Understand." Colin nodded with a smile and turned away. Vera lied. The last word of the elf language just knew. However, Colin did not dismantle Vera, because he understood that the other party was also lied to take care of his mood. In the end, the meaning of the elf words is not a lie, but a god. Therefore, the true meaning of the elf language that Villa said should be faith, the truth, not the god. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 17. Chapter 17. The blood of the giant warriors cannot improve its strength. In the weak morning light, Colin recorded on the sheepskin roll. That's right, yesterday, he drank the blood of the giant warriors who stole the stolen, but did not see any strange reaction in his body. Do you have to be the blood of the cavaliers? Colin was a little depressed and his eyes were patrolling in the camp. Raymond Cavaliers sat not far away in front of Colin, drinking water in a small mouth. This is not possible, after all, it is his own loyal servant. The British Cavaliers are urging everyone to clean up and prepare to set off. This is not good, I can't beat it. Maybe, you can go to the Mirror Lake battlefield to see. However, that battle has passed so long, and even if the corpse has not been eaten by the beast, I am afraid that it has already become a corpse. A familiar fragrance came, interrupted Colin's thoughts. Good morning, Colin Knight. Good morning, Miss Villa. Colin looked at the female mage standing in front of the pavilion, and a smile appeared on his face involuntarily. You look much better today. How do you feel? Do you need help? No, I should be able to do it myself today. Okay, if necessary, instructions at any time. During the conversation, Khalil's eyes gradually moved to Vera's white and slender neck, and suddenly I thought, I don't know if the mage's blood can do. Vera also found that Khalil was staring at his neck, and he was a little annoyed, and glanced at him fiercely. Good. Colin stepped up the war horse, and went to Vera's side, and walked side by side with her. The intimate physical contact is the best way to closer the relationship between men and women. This is of course clear. After yesterday's mounting, he was convinced that he had occupied a place in Villa's heart. I am afraid that she didn't even realize it. Vera did not really get angry, and said to Colin and left. The group continued to the north, and the road was too flat on the road, and he did not meet the giant demon army again. There are only a few not long-eyed thieves, and some beasts that do not know how to die, but they are relaxed by the British Cavaliers. It seems that Colin's plan is indeed effective, and they have temporarily shaken away the chase behind them. In order to preserve horsepower, the speed of the team has gradually slowed down. Colin also took the opportunity to quickly get familiar with Vera. However, he still did not explore the true identity of the other party. I only knew that she had just returned from Jevely to the north. When she passed the Mirror Lake, she just met a mercenary group who received an urgent call from Marquis Charles and followed the Jinghu camp. Jevely, also known as the City of Truth, is located at the junction of the East and Huia Forest of the Glorious Empire. It used to be the Elves' territory, but since they retired into the Huia Forest, they have been occupied by the Masters. In nominal, Jevely belongs to the Glorious Empire, but the highest power agency in the city is the Mage Parliament, and whether it is the Duke of the East or the Emperor of the Empire, there is no actual control of this Olympic city. I learned through the conversation that Vera went to Jevely to learn Olympic race when he was very young. So far, he has not returned to the north for more than 10 years. He is familiar with Colin, who is familiar with it. Moreover, from Villa seeing Marquis Charles's urgent recruitment order, he took the initiative to go to Jinghu Battalion to help. It can be seen that her relationship with the Sanhilder family is probably very close. Indeed, some nobles like to find a mage to accompany when fighting. After all, although the mage is uncomfortable, the role on the battlefield is really very large. However, considering the contradiction between the nobles and the mage, most of the proud mage will not ignore the aristocracy. And even if a small number of mages are willing to accept the employment of the nobles, they will generally issue a very high price. Like Vera, they come to help when they see the call order. Until the evening, the team fought again. But it didn't take long for the whistle rider that scattered the inquiry situation hurried back to the confession. Lord Bliss found a small team of human trace in front, suspected that it was the defeat soldiers escaped on the battlefield of Jinghu. Broken soldiers, bring them over. When he heard the defeat that escaped from the battlefield of Jinghu, Colin and Villa also followed him. Now they need to know how the battle situation in the Mirror Lake battlefield is, and whether the planning of Marquis Charles is successful. When this suspected defeated team was taken to the camp, Colin found that there were old acquaintances. "Dear Cavaliers, do you remember me? I am the Sol of the Firefox Mercenary Corps, and you give me the emergency call of the Marquis in person." Bliss watched the embarrassed Sal in the defeat team, and immediately recalled who the man was. There is no way, after all, the big filial son to kill his father to join the army is too impressive. How is the situation in Jinghu camp? Sadly, it's too miserable. Saul immediately burst into tears. It's not that I jumped into the lake, I'm afraid I can't escape. Do you see the army led by Lord Marquis? Marquis of Charles, Sal thought. Yes, we did see a golden lion flag behind the troll army, but what? Don't vomit, Bliss scolded with some impatiently. Yes, Sal didn't dare to hesitate anymore, so he had to tell him bluntly, but the army led by the Marquis seems to have retreated. Everyone was silent. Retreat. This is obviously the decorative statement. The real situation should be defeated. This bad news made everyone a little stunned for a while. Unexpectedly, just got rid of the chase behind him, but facing a more terrible giant army in front. Just as everyone was still digesting this bad news, Briss suddenly asked, "Can you chase troops behind you?" Saul quickly replied, "No." In the first few days, there were indeed small shares of the giants who were chasing us, but then gradually disappeared. It may be that it is not important for us. Bliss was relieved and looked back at Vera. "Miss, what should I do below?" Vera hesitated, and then turned his eyes unconsciously to Colin. Because of the successful helping everyone to get rid of the chase, Colin has gradually become the object of her reliance. Colin glanced at the group of embarrassing soldiers and lowered his voice. "We have to explore the movement of the giant army to make further planning this group of defeat." "Why, they are also humans," Villa screamed. Colin rolled his eyes, and whispered with patience, "The key to we can get rid of the chase before is because we are all cavalry and have high maneuverability now. If we do not abandon these two legs, we will. Master Cavaliers, in the first battle of Jinghu, our Fire Moral Mercenary Corps was almost completely destroyed, but I still would like to follow the adults to revenge for the dead brothers." Sal seemed to realize something and immediately shouted. Moreover, under his drum noise, many defeat soldiers also shouted. "Yes, revenge for the brothers. Adult, please lead us back. Don't abandon us. Revenge, revenge." Nympho. Seeing that many cavalry was also incited, Colin had to shut up, and then stared at Vera with serious eyes, hoping that she could make the right choice. However, Vera said with the righteousness to Colin, "They are also companions, I will not leave them. Later, he turned around to appease the excited soldiers. Colin sighed helplessly and looked at the filial piety with a frown. Sal also looked at it. As soon as the two of them met, they staggered immediately. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 18. Chapter 18 Differential. Colin feels that he is not the virgin. But I did not expect to meet one. However, this is not surprising. Although Vera is very powerful, after all, she is young. Moreover, most of the time spent to study Olympic race in the Virgo Tower, and has not experienced the cruelty of the world. Some naives, and some virgins are exciting. But what made Colin helplessly, the Bliss Knights also knew that they should abandon these defeats, but no matter how Colin persuaded, the St. Hilda family knight was resolutely refused to violate Villa's will. This made Colin's anger, and it was a little confused. What is Vera? Bliss's strength is probably the fourth order knight in Colin's view. Even the knights of this level are definitely core combat power even in the St. Hilda family, and their status is definitely not low. Then why did he have such a life of this female mage, and even set his own life for this? If it wasn't for the Duke of St. Hilda, there were only 3 sons and no daughter. I am afraid that Colin would doubt that this Vera was the daughter of the Duke. Although I was disappointed with the future of this team, Colin was not too panicked. After all, even if the Wolf Cavalry was caught up with siege, he could pretend to get away. Presumably there are no people in the world who will be more dead than him. This point is very confident. As for others, you can only ask for more blessings. He is also powerless. In the next 2 days, everything was still calm. There were no giants chasing troops, and even thieves who didn't open their eyes did not meet. On the contrary, he encountered several waves that escaped from the Jinghu battlefield again. The Virgin Varamid certainly did not hesitate to receive them. At this moment, the cavalry team, which was less than 100, quickly expanded to the scale of more than 1,000 people. Although the number of people has increased, people with a little military common sense know that the combat effectiveness has not increased much. Marching war is not as much as people, especially when strategic transfer. Obviously, Vera is such a guy who has no military common sense. She is now touting at Sal's flicker. After seeing the expansion of the number of people in the team, her confidence is getting more and more full, and even the ridiculous idea of continuing to gather and fighting with the Trontiers. However, except for these bad things, there are no good news. A wave of defeats recently told them that after defeating Marquis of Jaw of Charles, the Dace's main force chased the north after defeating Marquis in Charles. Therefore, now near Jinghu is safe. The news made everyone cheers and excited. In this way, what this escape team needs to face is only the Wolf Cavalry force chasing them before. Although the Wolf Cavalry judged that they had made a breakthrough, so many days have passed, and it should have reacted. According to Colin's thoughts, the most wise way now is to abandon those defeat soldiers. Before the wolf ride caught up with, he continued to north, looking for and hiding into the nearest human town. Instead of continuing to receive the defeat, the speed of marching was dragged down, and was finally caught up by the wolf cavalry again. The development of the matter is really like the expectations of Corin. 2 days later, behind the fleeing team, the trace of the giants was found again. Master Colin, the previous wolf cavalry may be caught up, otherwise, we still hurry away from the team and escape. Raymond Cavaliers obviously realized that they were not good and quietly found Colin's proposal. Colin is not panicked now. He even wanted to see the end of the group of self-made smart and not listening to his advice. Perhaps, there is still a chance to get the blood of the Bliss Cavaliers and Master Way. In this regard, Colin didn't have much guilt. Because he did not deliberately murder the two for blood. On the contrary, he reminded him long ago, but these people had to find death by themselves, so he had to adhere to the principle of waste use. But Colin glanced at Raymond next to him. For this loyal knight, he still does not want the other party to die here. Run yourself, I want it. Master, don't leave, I will never leave. Obviously, Raymond misunderstood the meaning of Colin. But Colin can't explain it. You can't tell the other party that he will pretend to be dead. Don't worry. Just when Colin was thinking about how to leave a reinforced Raymond flicker, a soldier ran to pass the words, Master Colin, Lord Briggs, please pass by. Okay, Colin had to clean up for the time being and follow the soldier to a tent in the center of the camp. In the tent, in addition to Vera and Bellies, D'Exiancy is also there. These days, Sal has obviously become Vera's dog legs with its excellent eloquence, clever mind, and charming gesture. Colin had to admire his drilling means. But at the same time, I also felt disgusting about this annoying guy. Colin Knight, you are here. Vera nodded with a smile at Colin, and it seemed that it did not have a gap due to the previous dispute about receiving the defeated soldiers. Bliss nodded without cold or hot. Sal bowed to salute, with a warm smile on his face. I did not expect to see you again, dear Karn. Snapped. The whip of Colin shook his hand directly and interrupted the second half of Daisy. Colin Knight, what are you doing? Vera was startled by this change, and immediately asked. Colin sneered, pointed at Sal, who was pumped to the ground, and said, the mercenary boy, remember my name Colin Angle. Sal was obviously stunned by this whip of Colin. At this time, he hadn't figured it out yet. How could the previous Consuduo become Colin Angle, but the hot pain on his body still let him know what he should do now. Sorry, I remember the wrong Master Colin. As a civilian, Sal could not question a noble, even if the nobleman did lie. Punish you to give the Colin Knight horses. Vera, who felt the reason he understood the reason, didn't blame Clylin anymore, and even felt that the punishment of a whip was a bit light. In this rigorous world, a civilian named the name of the nobles in person, and it was no exaggeration to be hanged. Colin looked anger on the surface, but laughed in his heart. He had seen this filial piety for a long time, and just took the opportunity to take revenge. Of course, it can also prevent the other party from saying that he had used the pseudonym before. Okay, the Colin Cavaliers, this time, we asked you to discuss the direction of the future. Presumably, you also know that the wolf cavalry behind us caught up again. In the face of Villa's inquiry, Colin did not answer immediately, but said to Sal's order to kneel on the ground, you go out first. Sal clenched his fist quietly, but did not dare to refute Colin, so he had to look at Vera with his help. But obviously, he overestimated his position in Vera's heart. Sal, go out first. Yes. Sal had to get up and leave. But at the same time, he buried his head deeply, and he didn't want to make the anger that could not restrain his eyes. This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 19. Chapter 19. Why do you target a mercenary like this? After Sal left, Vera asked in a narrow tone. Obviously, Vera also saw Colin's hostility for Sal, but she thought it was jealous of the two for herself. Thinking of this, her small face covered with the black yarn was a little blushing, but there was a hint of joy in her heart. Women always like to see men fighting for themselves, even if they do not like those men. A person who dares to kill even his father is not worthy of my respect, Coligny said justly, unswervingly revealed Sal's old. What? Vera was surprised. Indeed, Sal is a poisonous snake, so be careful. Bliss helped the side, and the knight apparently looked down on the uncle's filial son. I know. Vera nodded, and moved this little mercenary who was still a bit clever. Okay, let's return to the topic. Waylaw started to introduce the specific situation of the whistle riding to Colin. At this time, there are 2 wolves cavalry that can be confirmed. Each is almost the scale of 700 or 800 people, and the total number is equivalent to the current number of them. However, the other party is the most elite wolf cavalry in the giant division's regular army, and his own side, except for the cavalry who are less than 100 people, are still elite. The rest are all defeats that escaped from the Jinghu battalion. Moreover, these defeats are also mercenaries and people who have been temporarily pulled over by emergency recruitment. It is completely a group of black people. In this case, even without any military common sense, Vera began to panic, so he quickly found Colin to discuss the countermeasures together. Colin sighed and made the last hard work. Now that the defeat soldiers are left, we only have time to take the cavalry. Isn't there a better way? Vera was still unwilling. The kindness of this female mage used the wrong place to Colin, so I had to persuade it again. I know you don't want to abandon them, but even if we stay, we can't save them, we will only put on our own life. Wyra didn't speak, but his eyes were still stubborn. Colin had to turn his head to look at Bliss, hoping that the long-awaited knight would be more rational. However, the eyes of the Bliss knight were full of decisions. I pulled these people into this battlefield, and I have abandoned them once, and I don't want to abandon the second time again. Colin knew this time that Bliss did not agree to accept the collapse because of Vera's order, but because of guilty. Although in Colin's view, he was just doing the life of Juegio and could not count his fault. Looking at the resolute Bliss knight, Colin lamented in his heart. He is very clear that people like Bliss will be determined to be persuaded by others once they are determined. However, the Bliss Cavaliers also knew that this time it was really fierce, so he looked directly at Colin's eyes and asked seriously. Colin Cavaliers, I hope you can take Miss Villa first. No, I won't go, Vera refused immediately. Miss Willa. I won't go, these are my people, I have the responsibility to protect them. The atmosphere suddenly became sensational. Colin only felt a brain pain, as if watching a dog blood TV series. However, the phrase "my people" that Vera said in a hurry surprised him. Because they are qualified to say this, they must be members of the Sanhilder family, and they must also be members of the department. But the Duke of St. Hilda has no daughter. Is it an illegitimate daughter? No. Colin also thought that although the law of the aristocracy in this world is similar to the Middle Ages of the Earth, there are still differences. Here, the illegitimate child, female, is definitely no right to inherit. The aristocrats here are particularly attached to the pure pattern of blood veins. Even if the children are dead, the nobles would rather choose the heir from the family's department, and they will not pass the title to the illegitimate child, female. Therefore, even if Vera is really the illegitimate daughter of the Duke of the North, she is not qualified to say "what my people." Just as Khalil's true identity of Vera, the argument between the two opposite was calmed down. Unexpectedly, Bliss failed to persuade Vera to go first. Although some virgin is a bit stupid, the female mage does show admirable courage. There was a silence in the account. After a long time, Bliss suddenly said, "Colin Knight, you should leave here. Presumably you have learned from the Raymond Knight's mouth that your father Baron Angra has died, so you need to go back to inherit the title." Colin suddenly looked up and looked at Bliss's expressionless face, and asked slightly abruptly, "Why did this news not pass back to the Grey Castle?" Bliss hesitated, but still told it truthfully. From the end of last year, Master Marquis ordered all news to block the front line. Why? Bliss did not answer. But Colin can also guess the answer. It was nothing more than that at that time, the situation of the front line had turned sharply. Whether the Marquis of Jew Charles had to keep his face or to prevent the people behind the people from floating, there was motivation to block the news. But he may not know that such a move indirectly killed Colin's predecessor. Charles St. Hilder. Colin has quietly remembered the name. Colin Cavaliers, you should go back to the Grey Castle first, where you need you, Obviously for the first time Wyro learned the news, he immediately sympathized with Colin, and he wanted to persuade the other party to leave first. However, Colin posted an impassioned gesture, and refused to say, "I won't go, whether it is revenge for my father or the glory of the people, I must stay and fight against the troll." Of course, Colin will not leave at this time. But it is not because of those reasons, but because I don't want to waste the blood of a high-level knight and mage. "Colin," Wyra's beautiful big eyes shined, "you are a real knight." Even Bliss was moved, as if suddenly looking at Corlin. The three of them regarded for a long time, and the tent was full of generous air. Unfortunately, what Vera and Bliss don't know that the guy of Colin is already considering which posture should be pretended to be killed. When the three of them gradually calmed down, they finally began to discuss the countermeasures. Since it has already clarified the principle of not abandoning, no abandonment, then with so many burdens, it is a matter of the iron plate to be caught up by the wolf cavalry. A battle is inevitable. Bliss first began to talk about his combat plan, where to welcome the enemy, how to build a simple defense work, how to cooperate with the cavalry and infantry, and so on. Vero listened very much. As for how much this female mage who lacks military common sense understands, it is only God to know. Colin was disappointed, as if thinking about something. The Colin Knight, the Knight Cavaliers. What? Colin came back and saw that the two were staring at themselves. "Do you have any opinions on this combat plan?" Colin did not answer this question, but considered, "Sorry, I just got rid of it because I was thinking, maybe, we might escape this battle." "Really, how do you hide?" Vera asked, hoping. Within no presence, she didn't want to be a martyr. Moreover, the previous successful breakout gave her confidence, making her feel that Clorin might create another miracle. Colin drew a simple map on the ground with a whip, and then gently. "We are hiding here." This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 20. Chapter 20 Suspected Soldiers. As soon as the sky was bright, everyone began to clean up. As the trace of the wolf cavalry gets closer, anxious emotions have begun to spread in the fleeing team. Sal wrapped the half of the hare in his arms yesterday, and did not care about his companion who kept whispering. Instead, he looked around in the camp and looked for the beautiful figure. Soon, Sal locked the target. But unfortunately, another man was standing next to the figure. Sal touched his left face, and the whip mark above was still painful. The companion Bam looked at Sal, who was out of mind, and couldn't help laughing. "Okay, Sal, don't look at it, the noble young lady is not a civilian mercenarian like you can climb high." "Who said that the mercenaries can't like the noble lady?" Sal refuted impatiently. "Haha, do you really understand the gap between the status between civilians and nobles, stupid boy?" "Don't call me a silly boy anymore," Sal looked back at Bam fiercely. Okay, Bam shrank and quickly told. Then Sal let go of the other party, looking back at the figure again, and said deeply, "Bam, do you know the Count Iman?" "Of course you know, the Lord of the Eagle City." "That's right, do you know how the Lord of Merman came from?" "Didn't his father pass it to him?" "Yes, so, do you know how his father's title came?" "His grandfather passed on." Bam thought this problem was a bit stupid. No, Sal slowly shook his head, it was his grandmother passed to his father. So, Bam grabbed the hair of his bird's nest, his face was full of confusion. "Why is it a grandmother and not a grandfather?" Sal's eyes flashed in a strange light, "because the grandfather of the Count Iman is actually a civilian mercenary." "How is it possible?" Bam screamed. "But this is the fact. The grandfather of the Count Iman was married to the daughter of the former lord of the Eagle City as a mercenary. Later give the county's father the son of the mercenary." Bam opened his mouth, as if listening to a myth like a night. Sar's eyes flashed with strange light, which was something called ambition. He was closer to Bam and lowered his voice, as if he was an oath, "So, the son of the mercenary can also become a noble." After speaking, Sal was walking in the direction of the figure. Bam looked at his companion's tall back, and his mood was complicated. However, Sal did not tell Bam that the mercenary who married the daughter of the Count is a Six-Order warrior and the chairman of the Northern Mercenary Union. People. Ms. Weira, good morning. Colin Knight, good morning. Please allow me to hold your horse for you as an apology for you yesterday. Colin looked at the low eyebrow mercenary in front of him, and was bored for a while, waved his hand, as if he was rushing a fly. No need. Are you unwilling to accept my apology? Sal immediately made a grievance, and then deliberately revealed his left face, and the whip marks on it were still side. Colin, the real knight should know how to forgive it. Vera seemed to be deceived by the pitiful appearance of the mercenaries, and he spoke to help. Sal was happy, but at the same time it hurts. The favorite is Miss Vera will help him to siege. The pain was her name that she called Colin, without adding the knight suffix. This is an extremely intimate way. Too reserved. No, I think the head of the Firefox mercenary corps is too large and small to give me a horse. In fact, I just have a more important task to give it to the head of the Sal League. You look at me too high, Sal Bumba was not able to detect badly. Why, don't you want to help me this busy? Colin would not give the other party a chance. Of course, I am willing, this is my honor. Sal had to agree with his head, but his heart had begun to regret it. Very good, Colin grinned, showing sharp tiger teeth. In order to throw away the chase behind us, we need to mislead each other and make them unable to touch our true movement. Therefore, you please lead 50 people, later pick youth and strength and fast go north to move forward quickly. About 2 or 30 kilometers, you will reach the bank of the river. At this time, you should deliberately leave some traces of crossing the river, but in fact, you do need to cross the river, but quietly follow the rushing river all the way to the east, and you can converge with us about 10 kilometers. Of course, when you go down, you must eliminate the marks of marching, and you cannot attract the enemy. Do you understand? Sal was sweaty and rushed, and he felt that Colin was a public revenge. He made excuses to get rid of himself. Are you asking me to make bait? No, it's not a bait, it's a suspect, Colin said. Moreover, we will also cooperate with your actions, as long as you do it strictly according to what I said, there will be no danger. How to cooperate? Sal was still uneasy. Clinton frowned suddenly. If this is in the regular army, Sal dares to ask such a question, the coach can directly cut his head. Because the coach has no obligation to explain to every general of the men to explain to his full strategy. After each general gets the military command, just act according to the request of the military order. Instead of asking Dong and West, hesitated, picking and picking. Even if the coach is really allocated to you a mission to death, then you can only perform it. The military order is like a mountain, even if you really want to kill you, you can't hide. Unconditional obedience is the first priority of soldiers. But obviously, mercenaries like Sal could not have the quality of real soldiers. Colin was helpless and had to explain patiently. Our cavalry will spread all, search for the whistle of the wolf cavalry behind the wolf cavalry to ensure that the other party cannot understand our specific movements within the past 2 days. Therefore, as long as you hurry up, you will not be caught up. Sal thought about it and asked again, so, your plan is to let me lead the small stock forces to deliberately make the illusion of crossing the river to confuse the enemy, and the large army finds a place to hide? Yes. How do you know that the enemy will be fooled, even if we carefully clean up the marks of marching, but as long as we check it carefully, we will always find clues? Because, we will hide in a place where an enemy can't think of it. Where? Colin gradually became impatient. Mr. Sal, have you been to the Benliu River before? No. Then you won't understand. Colin smashed his belly and moved forward slowly. As I said, after arriving in the south bank of the Benliu, make some illustrations of crossing the river, and then go eastward all the way to the east. You will come to the place where I said to merge with the large troops. By then, you will be understood. Colin Knight. Saul chased a few steps and asked again. Mr. Sal, I believe you will be able to complete this task, right? Verawin said. Sir was holding his head up his chest and patted his chest with a big state. Of course, I will not let you down. Unfortunately, the mercenary who was losing the charm of Vera would not see it. A few steps forward to show a ridiculous sneer at Collins. This chapter is finished.